Hey, welcome to lesson number 1, and in lesson number 1 we will try to understand how to install Danphe open source in a desktop mode. My name is Prasad Koirala and I'm a technical evangelist for healthcare domain, and my main interest surrounds around hospital automation. So in this complete video I will try to explain you how to install the Danphe open source step by step, lesson by lesson in a desktop mode. Now this complete lesson number 1 is divided into two sections. In the first part, we'll try to understand the technological stack of Danphe. In what technology is the front end made, in what technology is the middle layer made, and so on. Because when you're doing an installation as an IT admin, you need to understand what you're installing, right? And then in the second section, which is the biggest part of this whole video, we will go through 10 steps to install Danphe open source in a desktop mode. You have to just follow these 10 steps. Even I'm flashing on the screen the 10 steps. If you just go ahead and if you go through the 10 steps, I'm 100% sure that you should be able to install Danphe. And if you have any problems, any issues, while you're installing Danphe open source, please go on this website and try to send us a chat message, or also you can send us an email down below, and we are more than happy to help you. If you need, you can also put the message in the GitHub. So if you know that there is a GitHub, where you can go and put the issues, more than happy to respond. So let us get started with the first section, the technological stack of Danphe.
Now, before we move ahead, it is very important to understand the architecture of Danphe, right? Or the technology stack in which Danphe is made, right? Because as you do the installations, you would be installing the runtimes, you would be installing the frameworks. So you should know, what exactly you are doing as an IT admin. So first thing, the complete Danphe application, you can divide it into 3 layers, right? Okay, first is the UI layer, the second one is the middle layer, and the last one is the database, right? So with that, you can have an idea of the technology stack, what Danphe is made, right? So first one is the UI stack, right? So in the UI stack, it's a browser-based application, so it uses HTML, it uses JavaScript, and it uses Angular framework, right? So it uses Angular. The middle layer is a Microsoft technology. It uses ASP.NET MVC, right? And for ASP.NET MVC, C# is a programming language, on which ASP.NET MVC is made, right? And to connect with SQL Server, right? To connect with the RDBMS, we use something called as Entity Framework, which is again a part of .NET and C#, right? And the backend RDBMS at this moment is SQL Server, right? Right. So that is the technology stack. So front end Angular, ASP.NET MVC, and SQL Server, right? Now we would recommend that SQL Server you can install the 2022 version, right? ASP.NET is 3.1, right? And Angular is 8.0, right? 8.x you can say, right? So that is the technology versions of the respective frameworks out there, right? So UI, the middle layer, and the RDBMS. So when the installations happen, right, you will see that the respective frameworks, I would be installing the runtimes, I'd be installing the RDBMS, and so on. So you can map with this architecture, which I've explained out here. So now the first thing is make sure that you are on the GitHub page. So remember our GitHub page, GitHub open source EMR, hospital management EMR. This is the URL, right? So make sure that you are on this page at this moment, right? Once you are on the GitHub page out here, you will see a couple of things. This is for IT admins, and I do understand that IT admins have very less knowledge about GitHub, or they must be using GitHub very less, right? So I want to just make sure that you guys understand how GitHub works, right? So in GitHub, if you see, this is our source code out here. So in case you are a developer, this is really good. You can download the source code. As said in the previous part of the video, this application is made using Angular as a front end, MVC as a back end, and SQL Server as a database. So if you are very sure that you know programming, you can download and you can compile yourself, you can make changes, right? But now, assuming that you are IT admin who is more who has more understanding of installation, who has more understanding of configuration, right, then this won't be the right thing to start with. What you can do is that you can start with our releases. So at this moment you can see at the right side there is a release. What is a release? A release is nothing but a compiled version out of this, so it is nothing but the final build, which you can just install live on your server and start using the application, right? So at this moment you can see it is 3.2. also tomorrow we can release 4.0, 5.0, but whatever it is, right, the steps will remain almost same, right? So click on this version 3.2 at this moment. Remember, if there is a new version, you should click on the new version, right? And when you go out here, right, you will find that there are a couple of zip files and couple of zip files out here, right? So let us try to understand them. Now you can see that there are almost 5 zip files out here. The first 2 down below, as if you're IT admin, you don't have to download. That is nothing but the source code, right? The same source code what you see out there. At that time when we made the build, this was the source code. So in case if you are a developer, you can use this to debug, right? But if you're IT admin, then your eyes should be only on these 3 zip files. So you can see there is something called as setups.zip, there is something called as database.zip, and there is something called as application.zip. Let me try to explain you each one of this. This setup.zip is having installables which are related to to the operating system or to the softwares. For example, when you talk about the Danphe open source, it uses SQL Server. So you will find the SQL Server setup out here. It uses .NET runtime. It will find the .NET runtime setups out here. So these setups, what you see out here, are nothing but the softwares which are needed to run the application, right? And these two zip files out here. This first one, application.zip, is nothing but the front end part of the application, the Angular part and the MVC part, and this database is nothing but the SQL Server part of the application. Now these all 3 files are very important to install this software, right? So I'm going to go and download each one of them. So I'm going to click on application.zip, I'm going to click on database.zip, and I'm going to go and click on setup.zip, right? So you can see all of them are downloading out here. So must be we can just go to the folders of the downloads, and there it is. There you can see it is getting downloaded. Now one very important thing, as we move ahead, already I have stressed this part when I started this video, is that Danphe application currently, in its current scenario, in its current status, only works on Windows operating system. So in case if you're thinking about that you have Linux operating system or a Linux web hosting, then must be that Danphe application won't be too useful, right? So very quickly, if you see at this moment, this computer, what I have out here, it is a Windows Server edition. So if you see out here, it is a Windows Server 2019. I have just put it's a proper operating system. It is please make sure that it is 64-bit. Please make sure that you have enough RAM and enough hard disk out here, right? So that it is, you can see all the 3 files have been downloaded. Let us go and extract first the setup.setups, right? So I'm going to go and just say extract, or I can extract this one, right? At the same time, I would like to go and extract the other files as well, right? So let us go and extract each one of them. So there it is, getting extracted. Okay. Also application, right? And extract all. Great. So that's what you all need to install the Danphe application on your server. So now that we have all the downloads, I will just go and delete these RAR files out here. Hang on, something is still getting extracted, right? The application is still getting extracted, so let us wait for it. Right, okay, so let it get extracted, then I'll delete these RAR files. So first thing what we can do is let us start with setups. So you can see there are setups out here. Let us start with setups. Now you can see there are a couple of setups. These setups you can get from online, also from Microsoft website. I've just made your life easy by giving you all the setups in one go, right? So you can see, first let us start with SQL Server. Remember I said that the application is having 3 layers out there. One is the front end Angular, the middle layer MVC, and then the backend, which is SQL Server. So let us start with SQL Server. Out here you can see we are using the SQL Server Express edition. So you can see there are, when you talk about SQL Server, there are two setups out there. One is the backend service. So this SQL 2022, at this moment we are using SQL Server 2022 as our current version, and I would suggest to stick to this version only because I'm showing the installation on this version, right? So in case tomorrow new versions of SQL Server come in, and if you try to take the new version, it is possible that you can have problems, right? So for 2022 this video is valid. For .NET Runtime 2.0, 3.1 this is valid, but must be for other versions, it would be invalid, right? So it has to, that's why I've given you setup only, so that you don't have to Google hunt around and make mistakes, right? Okay, so first one, this is the Express Edition. In case if you're not sure about the differentiation between Express Edition, Developer Edition, Enterprise Edition, please send us a mail. We can help you figuring out that, right? So this Express Edition is the backend. This is the front end. This is the Management Studio. SSMS stands for SQL Server Management Studio. It is a UI which connects to the backend, right? So this is the backend engine. First, let us start installing this. So I'm going to go and run SQL 2022, and remember that this edition, whatever you are seeing out here, this installation, whatever you're seeing out here, it is a quite complex installation because it is an enterprise edition, right? So whenever you have problems, please send us a mail on the mail which is flashed on the UI, right? Now you can see there is basic, there is custom. What I will do is I'll just select on custom out here. This UI, this installation, what it does is, this installer, it actually goes and downloads the SQL Server into this drive and then starts the installation, right? So you can see it says that download size is 278 MB, right? So I'll just say install. So the first thing is it will start downloading the packages. Once it downloads the packages, then it will go and start the installation, right? Now a couple of things out here. As I've said that this is enterprise edition, and enterprise edition, and the installation is quite complex. Frankly, we are trying to create a setup package. We are trying to create a setup installer, but that is still not out in the public, so that your installation can be made easy. So remember that when you are actually installing this software, you have to have a lot of patience, right? And you have to try to follow the video steps, the steps which I've shown in the video, right? And whenever you have any issues, GitHub page is open for you. You can go and log a request in the GitHub page, or else you can send an email on the email address which is given down below. So have patience. Remember, you are installing an enterprise software. So as an IT admin, have patience. Give a complete half a day for this, right? So that you are able to automate your hospital, right? It's a pain, isn't it? So please take a little bit of pain to see the heaven, right? So here it is. You can see now this thing pops up. I'll say yes, I want to install a new SQL Server standalone installation out here, and there it is. Yeah, just scroll below and say I accept, and I'll say next. These are standard ones, and I'll say next out here, right? Let it go. Remember, it has to be Windows Server. So very important that it has to be Windows Server, right? Now this all should come as passed out here. You can see here, if you see any kind of errors out here, that means it is a problem. If you have an error, then please send us a print screen. We are more than happy to help you. Windows Firewall warnings I'm okay with, but if I see some red signs out here, then it is a problem, right? So I'll just say next. Right, so you can see what kind of features you want. So for now, I don't want to do a full text search. I'm not interested in replication. I'm not interested in machine learning. We just need the database engine, right? So I'll say next. In case you want to go and change the paths, you can do that. Say next, and let us move ahead with the installation, right? So the name is SQL Express. What I'll do is I will keep it as it is, right? I'll keep it as it is, not a problem. If you want to change the name, you can change the name, but I'll just keep it SQL Express. Right. One of the things which can come to your mind is that, does SQL Express have any kind of licenses? Now please understand that SQL Express is a free SQL server edition which is given by Microsoft, and you can install in production. But please note that SQL Express has a lot of restrictions out there. So in case if you are looking at hospitals, which are like having 5,000 patients or something, a big hospital, then please do ping us. We would like to give you a more appropriate version of SQL Server, and in those scenarios I would suggest that you should buy a SQL Server license. But SQL Express is free, you can use it, you can use for production. There are no license and there are no attached strings. Only thing is that it has certain restrictions around the number of cores, it has certain restrictions around the number of the size of the hard disk, the size of the database, right? So if you want further details, you can email us, but for now I'll say next. Remember, when I'm doing the installation, I would be talking a lot of extra things about the Danphe software, so do hear all of those things as well. So it says that, do you want only a Windows authentication mode or do you want a mixed mode? So I'm sorry. So what I'll do is I'll select mixed mode, and let us have a mixed mode for now. Windows authentication means that the user should be present in Windows, right? This is a more better way of doing security. Mixed mode means that the user can, if the user is not from the Windows system, it is not from your users, right, from the Active Directory, still he can log in, right? So depending if you want a good security, then I would suggest that just stick to Windows authentication. If you say no, like other people from outside the organization would also like to log in, then must be this is a good thing to have, right? So I'll just put a password out here. Right. Say next. And so there the installation is going on. Now just in case, as the installation is happening, some more important things here. You would be wondering that why is the name Danphe given for the software. Just as a history, this software is created in Nepal. It is created in Nepal by iMark, okay, and also it has feedback from India as well. So there are Indian developers who are given feedback to this, right? But because the origination is from Nepal, right? In Nepal, the national bird is Danphe. So there is a bird out in Nepal which is a national bird, and that national bird is Danphe. So Danphe is nothing but a bird, and just to show that it is originated from Nepal, it has come from Nepal, right? So as a respect, as a honor, the name of this open source is Danphe Open Source EMR, right? So that's just a history as the installation is going on. So there you can see our installation is getting completed, right? So just revising couple of things for IT admins out here. Windows operating system is important. We are using SQL Express as a backend. SQL Express has its own limitations. If you want to go for a very big hospital out here or multi-branch hospitals, then please, my suggestion would be to buy a proper enterprise edition from Microsoft. For that, we are more than willing to guide you. If you can send us a mail on the top email which is flashed, right? And please make sure it should be 64-bit. Please make sure you have appropriate RAM. Now, one of the questions which you can ask is that how much RAM is required for this? How much hard disk is required for this, right? So just as a input, I feel that at least first thing about the hard disk, you are the best decider, because if you are having everyday a lot of patients, right, you should ensure that you have appropriate hard disk. But 80 GB is what my suggestion is, and at least 16 GB of RAM, at least my suggestion is. In case if you don't have the budget, frankly, you can keep it 8 GB, but don't come below 8 GB, right? So 8 GB to 16 GB and 80 GB is the minimum hard disk, from where you can start with, right? I'll just close it. You can see everything is good. Our SQL Server has been installed. Very nice, right? Now, remember, as I said in the setup, there are two parts. This is the back end and this is the front end of SQL Server. So let us install the front end of SQL Server. That is the next step. So I've clicked on SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. So very quickly, guys, what are the things needed? Setups, we have 3 folders which I have given in the release. Setups, where you have all the setups, the Microsoft software setups, database is where you have your database, which we'll be attaching later on, right? We'll see that in a couple of minutes. And application is your front end, which the user will be using, right? So again, you can see SQL Server Management Studio with Azure Studio. Yes, I'll say install, and let us go ahead and do the installation of the SQL Server Management Studio. SQL Server Management Studio is the front end for the backend SQL Server, right? So in case you would be saying that, okay, Shiv, you are saying that there are two things. One is a backend SQL Server and one is a front end, right? So yes. So just in case if you want to check that is your backend running or not, you can go to the services, right? Services of Windows. Now the services of Windows, if you as IT admin, you know that it is having all the background processes which are running. So in case our SQL Server has been installed properly, then somewhere in the background we should see SQL Server running. So there it is, you can see SQL Express is running. So this is a sign that your backend has been installed properly, right? Okay, great. So there it is. This is the front end which is getting installed. So that is the way you can check your backend. In case if the services is not running, then just right click and say start, right? Just in case. Okay, great. So the installation is in progress, right? So there it is, you can see Management Studio has been installed. Close it. Nice. So now let us go and check if our SQL Server is running or not. That's important. So I'm going to go to SQL Server Management Studio 2019. Now remember, your Management Studio can be of a different version like 2019, and your backend can be of a different version 2022, right? So that is okay. So I'm going to go and use Management Studio, and I will just connect to SQL Server and make sure that my SQL Server is up and running, right? So remember, this is our backend out here which is running, right? So from the UI, we'll just make sure that everything is running. So this is the instance name. In case you don't find your instance name out here, what you can do is you can browse more out here. You can go to the database engine and select whichever is your instance. In case most of the time the name should be seen here, but just in case. And remember, I said that there were two types of login. We selected the mixed login. So you can now log in with Windows authentication as well as the SQL Server authentication. At this moment I will just use Windows, but in case if you have selected just Windows, right, then it is just Windows. Okay, and as I said that this is more secured as compared to this one. Both of them have their own scenarios to use, right? This one is if you want to just make, if you just want to make your application inside the intranet, should not go out, right? And if you say no, like it's possible that my database can be accessed from third parties outside the hospital, this is the one, right? So depends, what your scenario is. I've just selected Windows authentication. I'll connect, and then in the Object Explorer here you can see at this moment there are no databases, but this is where you would be attaching the Danphe database, right? So SQL Server installation is complete. Till now we have done the SQL Server installation. Now the next step is to go ahead and attach the database of Danphe. So this is the database of Danphe, and we will go ahead and we will check how to install the same. Now if you look at the Danphe database, it is divided into two sections. One is the admin, right? This is the admin, and the other one is the core database EMR, right? Now this admin database is nothing but it is mostly for auditing purpose. So whenever somebody goes and changes the patient data, or when somebody goes and logs into your system, or somebody goes and does some billing thing, right? So those kinds of audits are actually stored into this Danphe admin database. So specifically when you're talking about compliance part, for that this database is made, right? But the most important database is our EMR database, where our actual data lie in. This is where your patient data, your inventory data, your pharmacy data, all of your data is all into this, right? And you can see that there are two types of files out here. One is the .back file, which is a backup file of SQL Server, and another ones are incremental files out here, right? So let us go ahead and try to get this backup file into SQL Server, right? So I'm going to go and say copy address as text, and you have to go and expand this database node out here, and you have to say restore database. So it's a backup file, you have to restore it. I'll say restore it from a device, means from my drive, right? I'll browse it. I will try to add the path out here. I'll say Control V and I'll say OK. Now you can see that is something which is not right. Okay. I think, what has happened is, you can see out here, look at this path. This path, where I have downloaded my Danphe database is in the downloads folder. It's in the C users Danphe downloads. Now remember that SQL Server, needs a lot of admin rights. So specifically, if you put it into your desktop, if you put it into your downloads folder, it is possible that SQL Server does not have access, to those folders, right? So what I would suggest is to go ahead and when you download your files, right, which I did not do actually, you make sure that you download it in something, which is more like C drive or D drive, right, rather than into downloads and desktops, right? So what I've done is I've copied the same files over here, right, and I will try to attach it from here. So remember, as a caution, again I'm saying I downloaded that into the downloads folder when I clicked on when I actually downloaded at the start, right? If you remember, I just downloaded from the browser and it by default it went into downloads and desktops, and these folders are not accessible to SQL Server too much, right? So what I've done is I've now copied this into a proper C drive out here, right? So must be you can copy that into a proper C drive. So if I do that, now I'm expecting that SQL Server should detect my backup file. So I'll say restore database. Remember, you can get into such kind of issues. Please send us a mail on the top email. You can also go and chat with us in case if you think you want to talk with us, right? You can go to our website out there and you can also click on the chat window and you can chat with us. You won't get a technical assistant right away, but yes, you can fix a time with us, where we can probably try to help you out, right? And remember, your GitHub link is out there. So go ahead and try to put a more detailed, detailed comments on the GitHub, right? GitHub ticket, raise a GitHub ticket, and we are more than happy to help you, right? So I'll just say add out here. I'll say Control V, and now this is a proper drive. When it's a proper drive, you can see it shows up the backup file, which it was not showing previously, right? So I'll just say OK, and I'll just say OK, and there you can see it says, so by default, when this database was created, its name was dev_Danphe EMR, which is a development one. In case if you want to change it, you can go ahead and change it. I will not change it for now, and let us click on OK. Now when you click on OK, you get some couple of errors out here. You can see there is a red sign out here. There is an error, right? So let us click on this restore database out here. It says that file stream feature has to be enabled. Yes, so that is so right. Basically, when you talk about hospital softwares, when you talk about EMR softwares, right, one of the things which is very important out there is that you have a lot of files. For example, when somebody does a scan, a heart scan or any kind of scan, you get huge number of files. To store those files, we need to enable SQL Server file stream. So many of our files, like let us say you make a PDF, you do some test, and the tests are again huge files, right? Or doctor writes some reports, right? So for that, the normal database of SQL Server does not work. We also have used the file stream. So we have to just go and enable file stream in SQL Server. So for that, what you will do is you will again go back here. You will say SQL Server in your search window, and you will click on the configuration manager. Go very slow. Again, as I've said, there are lots of configurations which you need to do out here. It's an enterprise edition. So in enterprise edition, you have to just make sure that it's an enterprise software. I'm sorry. This is not an enterprise edition, but an enterprise software. So enterprise software you have to do a lot of configurations, right? So you can see here, I'm going here. I will go to SQL Express. Remember, this is my instance, right? And I will go to file stream, and I will enable file stream out here. I'll say apply. I'll say OK. And also what you need to do is you also need to enable file stream on the instance also. So you'll again right click here, you'll go to the properties window out here, and you will go to advanced out here, and just make sure that the file stream is also enabled here, full access enabled. I'll say OK. Now in order that these changes should be enabled, make sure that you restart your SQL Server. So I'm going to go and stop my instance. You can either stop it from the service as well if you wish. You can either go and stop it from here as well. Remember the services. You can stop it from here as well, but let me do it right away from here. Okay, so right click and I will say stop out here. I'll stop this. So these changes actually need that your SQL server should be restarted, and I have just restarted my SQL server, right? So with all that, now I hope that I should be able to attach my database, right? So again, let us go and copy this path out here, copy address as text, restore the database, and let us go to device out here. Let us say browse, let us say add. Again, let us put here the path, and let us click on this backup file out here, and let us say okay, and let us try to restore. Now remember that there are a couple of things out here. You need to have the same SQL Server edition which I've just shown out here, SQL Server 2022 Express Edition. Anything like, if you try to use 2019, or if you're trying to use something higher version, must be there can be conflicts, right? And as I've said, in case you have some errors, please send us an email. We'll try to help you out, right? So there it is. You can see it is restoring the database, right? Great. Now, what is this database we are trying to restore? In this database, you have the database, as well as it has some default data. For example, default data like the services what we sell in the hospital. Default databases like the medicine names and so on. So a lot of default things are out here to make your life easy. So there you can see the Danphe database out here, and you can see all the tables which are there out here. Now remember that this is not a developer learning class. In case if you want to learn as a developer, we have a different track out there, and I would suggest to all the IT admins, don't fiddle around with these tables. We are not responsible if you don't understand the tables, and if you're fiddling around with it, and if you're doing something without the knowledge, it is possible that your application will never work, right? So we are given the freedom to you guys, right? But at the same time, we are warning you that democracy comes at a cost. Okay, so there it is. Danphe database has been enabled. Now remember, I had said that we have two databases out here. So we have attached the dev_Danphe EMR, which is our main database. But remember that for logging purpose, for profiling purpose, we also have the admin database as well, right? So let us go ahead and create the same. So I'm going to now, for the admin database, we don't have a backup file. We are given the script file. So what you have to do is, here the step is a little bit different. So let me go and create a database out here with the name Danphe admin. If you wish, you can put some other name as well. I would suggest you to keep the same name, or else you have to do a lot of changes then again in the config files. So just try to keep the same name, Danphe admin, and there it is. Now this is the script file out here, and you have to just go ahead and run the script file, right? So what I'll do is I'll just edit the script file. I can copy paste this, Control C, and let me say new query. Now you need to be very, very careful when you're running the query. Just make sure that you run this query in Danphe admin and not in dev_Danphe EMR. This is very important, right? So just make sure that you select out here. So I'm going to go and paste it out here. Must be I can just go and check the syntax by clicking on this button out here once, and then I'll say execute it. So there it is. It has created the necessary tables in the Danphe admin as well, right? So let me just go and check. So there it is. And also I'm sure that just want to check once the Danphe EMR. So both of the databases are now done, right? So we are now done with the database part. Now comes the application. Okay. Now, as we said that our application is made using the .NET framework, the .NET Core, right? And it is made using 3.1, right? So what you need to do is again go back to setups, right? So in the setup, the first thing what we will need to install is we will need to install the .NET runtime, right? So you can see there's a .NET runtime out here. I'm going to go and install this .NET runtime. So there it is. Remember, at this moment we have given the x64 as the setup. Now remember that our application uses .NET 3.1, but the .NET 2.0 runtime is more than enough to run the application in production, right? So I'm going to go and say install, and let us quickly install the .NET Core runtime, right? So there it is. Close it, right? So that is good. So now everything is configured, right? One last step, before we run the application, what we will do is we'll first run the application in the desktop mode. Please note, we will first run the application in the desktop mode. Then in the next lab, we will try to run this application on a web server, right? So there it is. So this is the database part, which is already done. Setups, right? Now let us go to applications out here. Now we need our application at this moment. If we run our application, it has to point towards both of these databases, isn't it? Right? So at this moment, if you see, both of these databases are running on which computer? They are running on this virtual machine which I have here called as VM123. Okay, so if you look at the instance name, this is the server name VM123 where both of them are running. So I'm going to go and copy this, right? And I will go to my applications. Remember, these applications I have copied in my C drive. Please note it. So I'll go to my applications out here, and you need to go and search a file called as appsettings.json, right? You need to search a file called as appsettings.json. You can just open that in Notepad out here. So I'm going to go and open it in Notepad. And so the database name is same. You can see here now there are a couple of connection strings which the application uses. So the first thing is I will just replace everything with my server name, right? So I'm going to go and replace everything with my server name out here. So there it is. There it is, right? Now you can see we don't have this Danphe packs at this moment, but let it be there, because we do have plans, to have the archival etc. as well, right? The picture archival of the scans, right? So do keep it as it is, so that there is no confusion. Also make sure that one of the very important things what you need to make sure here is, let me see, okay, I think everything looks good. Okay, everything looks good out here. Other things just keep it as it is. We will talk about these things later on, right? But the most important thing is that just make sure that you change this, and yes, try to keep a double slash out here in case if it is using the computer name slash the instance name. Good, right? And I'll just save it. Okay, and now let us try to run the application, right? So to run the application, what you can do is you need to go ahead and run this Danphe EMR exe. You can see this is the application out here. Please note the type. Look at the type here. The type should be the application. So I'll just sort it by type out here. So just make sure that this is application and this is the Danphe EMR exe, right? So just make sure that you try to run this. Now if everything goes good, now you can see here I'm getting a because I have an antivirus installed out here, it is saying that your Windows is protected, you cannot run the exe, right? So I'm going to go and click on more info and I'll say run anyway, right? So just make sure that if you're running this exe and if you have a if you have some antivirus out there, just allow it to run the exe. Now if everything goes good, your console application should look like this, right? If something is wrong out there, then it will start throwing exceptions out here, and you have to read the exceptions and try to figure out, right? Now you can do, now remember that whenever you get an exception out here, there can be many mistakes, like for example, someone can make a mistake of not putting the connection string, someone can make a mistake of not installing the runtime. So just make sure that whatever steps I've shown out here, try to run it as it is. And in case you have a problem, there is the email which is flashed out there. You can also go and log in into GitHub, and you can go ahead and you can comment out there. We'll try to help you the best, right? And remember that we do have a separate support. If you want to exclusive support saying that, can you install this application on my server? I would like to test it. then please contact us for the same as well, right? So now the application is running. Let me go and let us go and browse this localhost 5000. This is where the application is running, and let us just check that if we are able to see the website, right? Now it is advisable to run the application in Chrome because this is very much Chrome compliant. It should still run on on other browsers as well. In case if you have a recent browser, I would suggest, but I found that with Chrome the application is more compatible. Okay, so there it is running. Right now by default, now first thing, if you see this page, congratulations, that means that you are almost out there, right? Now what we have done out here is we have a default login here, which is admin and pass 123. Okay, let me just check. I think it's pass 123, right? So there is a default login created, admin pass 123, and if you are over here, right, that means that your application is up and running. And if you are seeing all this out here, that means congratulations, right? Your application is now running and you can start using the application. Now at this moment the application is running in the local host. In the next video I will show you how to run the application over a network, right? So mostly in a hospital you won't be running like this using a local host, isn't it? You will be running, you would like to install your application on a web server, right? Great.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of lesson 1, and in lesson 1 we have gone through all the 10 steps of how to run this application in a desktop mode. Now if you are coming till here, if you appreciate our effort, right, and if you are able to run this application, please send us a print screen and please tag me and iMark Digital on LinkedIn if possible, saying that hey, like I was able to install your Danphe software, I was able to run it, right? You know, that makes us feel that yes, you know, whatever efforts we are putting out here is making sense, right? So if please go ahead, send us a print screen that yes, here it is running, right? The patient screen, tag me on the following link, you know what you can see written on the video, as well as iMark Digital. It would just make us feel great, right? Okay, so that brings us to lesson number 1. So what is in lesson number 2? Lesson number 1, we have ran the application in desktop mode. Now in lesson number 2, what we will do is we will go ahead and we will try to run this application inside a web server. So I'm going to use IIS, and this application which we have currently installed, we will see that how we can run inside a web server, because if you don't run inside a web server, you won't be able to expose the application on the internet, on your intranet. So go ahead, install the software, right? Thank you.